Hi folks, thanks for watching. It's story time again, and it's disclaimer time. I'm not going to be telling a Bible story today. Get my red hat on, get ready. Yeah, that's better. Now, you all should know by now what this hat means. Yeah, no Bible story today. Just a short trip to that sweet spot between reality and my seemingly depthless imagination. Today, I'm going to share yet another genuine, made up, partially true kind of lie that could have happened other than the way I remember it. Yeah, that's it. In other words, I'm going to regale you with another tale from when I was a boy. Growing up in Haywood, Tennessee. Now, a few weeks ago, I was doing some work on my old pick-em-up truck, and I was looking at that little sticker inside the door, information sticker. Actually, I was looking at the sticker trying to figure out what year model the thing was so I'd get the right battery. Anyway, I found it, and while reading it, I realized my truck was 25 years old. 25 years. Man, I got a full-grown man-child that is 24. That's the only truck he's ever known. Seems like it's new to me. It's been a good one. That got me to thinking how good that truck's been. Had me remembering times in my life when I've seen folks sit around jawing over what great automobile they had. We've all had fond memories of our favorite means of transportation. It could have been a fast car, maybe a convertible, a pickup truck, maybe a Harley motorcycle. Maybe it was a John Deere or a Massey Ferguson tractor. Heck, some people like riding a school bus. Could have been a four-wheeler, a moped. Maybe it was your first Huffy bicycle from Sears and Roebuck. It had that bicycle seat and them high-rise handlebars. Woo, you remember it? Yes, sir. The plastic tassels hanging down out of the handles looked like fire coming out the back when you're tearing down the road. Wow. Evidently, my bike had Jake brakes on it. You get the picture. I bet just now, though, while I was talking, all of y'all had a brief thought about a particular mode of transportation just flipped through your memory. I did too. Bet mine wasn't like yours. Back when I was a boy, my favorite way to get around was old Blackjack. Not one of those rides like we was just talking about. Old Blackjack was what some folks would call a horse. Now I knew better. Blackjack was more better than a horse. You see, Blackjack was a hoss. There's a difference there. If you ever had a hoss, you'd know the difference. If you didn't, then I can't explain it to you. Blackjack, he was the best riding, roping, cutting, hunting, plowing, packing, all-around farm horse would ever live back in them hills of Haywood Holler. Shoot, man. He'd give you a $50 ride if you're sitting on a $5 saddle. That's how good he was. Add this to the fact that he was pretty enough to make a rabbit hug a hound dog, and you'd start to see what a hoss old Blackjack really was. Woohoo! He was a sure enough good one. Now, I've told y'all before, when I was a boy in Haywood Holler, I loved to hunt. Those of you that sit through these things know that hunting played a major part in most of these tales that I tell. People knowed me back then, you'd have swore that boy's half human, half non-fat dried milk, and half mountain cur. Yeah, math works out. Not because I'd bite you, because I hunted all the time. Man, I rarely thought about anything other than hunting. I hunted in season, I hunted out of season. If I wasn't hunting, I was asleep dreaming about hunting. When I was doing chores, I was still hunting. Hunting a fat faster way to finish working so I could get back to hunting. I never took no lessons, never read no books about hunting, just learned to hunt from hunting. That's not entirely true. I was taught. My Irish grandpappy, he taught me how to bear hunt. He taught me bear hunting without a gun the Irish way. I'm going to teach you right now the way it's done. You wait till the coldest day of the year when the pond freezes over. You go out to the deep end with your home-like chainsaw, blah, 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 blah. Wow, you cut a bear-sized hole in that ice. About yay big. Then you hide over in the bushes and you wait. Well, the sunshine will beat down on that hole and warm that water up. And the fish, they feel that warm water and they start splashing around. Now old Mr. Bear, he'll see those fish splashing around and num num rumbly. He'll ease on out there for a tasty bite of fish. Now, while he's standing there scooping up fish, you ease out on the ice quiet like, creep up behind him, and you kick him in the ice hole. You'll learn a lot from your granddaddy if you pay attention. Irish get away with so much. That one's on you, Mama. Well, back to the story. This hunting affliction of mine had gotten much worse since I got my own gun for my 10th birthday. Now, I had hunted since I could walk with Paul's guns, but being a near full-grown man of 10 years old, I'd been given my grandpappy's old hog rifle to call my very own. Ooh, it was an old beat-up hawking 50 cal muzzle loader. Shoot farther than a man could see. Now that I had my own gun, hunting was truly the only thing that mattered. I had it made. Had the world by the tail and I was pulling downhill. Now, this all worked out fine, since back then a large amount of what we ate was wild game. Of course, now, we had to buy flour and meal and coffee and sundries, and we killed chickens and hogs every so often, but most of our meat was wild game. Try and remember, this is back when the hills was pretty sparsely populated. People were still spread out. Sparkman's store, that's where we did our trading. It was only half as far as town, which was plumb the other side of the county. Getting to town was a full day's ride on a road that was more dirt than it was road. So our trips to town were limited. Besides, Mr. Sparkman carried pretty much everything you needed. Also, unlike them stores in town, Mr. Sparkman would trade goods for anything of value. Eggs, berries, meat, furs, baked goods, all those things were the same as cash to him. Well, anyway, one cold winter morning, we was eating breakfast. Mama looked up from her plate and says, "Paul, we have run out of salt. I told you last week that salt gourd was rattling hollow. Besides, there ain't a crumb of cornmeal left. I boiled up the last grounds of coffee for breakfast this morning. We get low on sugar, and I scraped the bottom of the flour barrel last night when I made these biscuits. You done laid around here and let us run plumb out of food. Nobody in this family wants to starve to death. So you saddle up old Blackjack and you get on over to Sparkman's store, or we gonna be eating nothing but unsalted dandelions." Paul dipped his last bite of biscuit in his coffee, and after he swallowed it down, took a deep breath, and he said, "Well, I'll be going out in a day or two, I reckon. It's snowing pretty hard right now, and it ain't a fit day for a ride." Now, I was sitting there nibbling on a biscuit, already feeling a little hang-jawed because I wasn't out hunting, so I wasn't paying them much mind. But my ears perked up when I heard Mama's voice change. Now, Mama curled her lips back, kind of whispered and kind of growled through her teeth. "Today, you can eat dandelion soup with no salt and no bread if you want to, but I ain't going to stand for no such thing. You can go, you can send the boy, or you can send Mr. Sparkman smoke signals for all I care. All I know is somehow, somebody better go somewhere and get some food in this house, not someday, but today. Ooh. Mama done had what was called a conniption fit. Now, Pa was like the rest of us. I knew he was more than a little scared. But being cold-natured, he wasn't studying about making a trip out the store on this cold day, but had a little grin at the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, it hit me too. Mama done slipped up and give him a way out with those two little words, the boy. He just looked over at me, jerked his head toward the door. I nodded as I tried hard to hide my excitement. I finished my biscuit. Folks, it was hard to swallow the way I was practically bubbling up inside. I couldn't hardly breathe because this meant one thing to me, hunting trip. I figured I would hunt all the way to town, grab a few supplies, then hunt all the way back home. I jumped and went to fill up my powder horn, and my heart dropped all the way to my socks. There it was. The reason I wasn't already hunting today, my last keg of powder had just a little dribble in it. Dadgum. I couldn't even hunt with that. It wasn't enough to load my gun one time. And I always like to keep my rifle ready loaded, ready to shoot. But with no powder, I'd have to go directly to the store. Dadgummit. But wait a minute. At least I could hunt my way back home. So I pulled my old coonskin cap down way low over my ears, opened the door and I whistled, Blackjack. Well, I heard Blackjack nicker and here he come a-tromping through the snow. Ooh, he was pretty. He was all things. He was shiny as the sun and dark as a moonlit night's inky black soul. He glided across that new snow like he was leading the world's smallest parade. Ooh, he was awful good hoss. He come on up to the house and stood there, just waiting to see what I wanted so early in the morning. I led him out to the barn and gave him a double handful of oats in his trough. I took the saddle and blanket off the wall and throwed them on him. Then I stood there and I waited for old Blackjack to finish chomping them oats. Then I tightened the girth. I bridled him, tied on a few furs behind the saddle to use for trading, and I jumped up in the saddle. Ooh, ooh, ooh. It was barely daylight, and that saddle was colder than a cast iron thunder mug. It tickles me how many people get that reference. Well, knowing I couldn't shoot my gun with no powder, I just shoved it down in the rifle scabbard, rode out to the end of the yard, turned towards Sparkman's store, and said, "Get Jack!" Let loose the reins and give Blackjack his head. Then I just kind of turtled down inside my sheepskin collared coat, flipped it up, latched that top button, stuck my hands down in them warm pockets, leaned back against that pile of furs, and relaxed, knowing old Blackjack was going to take me right on over the hills to the store while I took a nice warm nap. Swaying to the rhythm of his hooves. That was some good sleep. As I said, it was a right for a piece. So I enjoyed a nice long dream about hunting. Hunting girls maybe, but still hunting. I really liked hunting. Well, I was jolted awake when old Blackjack suddenly came to a stop and snorted. I know we'd done arrived at Sparkman's store, so I shook the snow off my coat, popped my head up out of that coat like a whistle pig looking for his shadow. I reached back, grabbed up my bundle of furs and shook them clean as I slid off old Blackjack over the ground. I bolted into that store, and after I said good morning to Mr. Sparkman, I throwed them furs down on the counter and we went right into trading. Ooh, it was a good year for furs, and I left with a fair amount of supplies. I got 4 bushels of cornmeal, 8 big old tins of baking soda, 2 of them 100-pound sacks of sugar, 100 pounds of coffee, 3 of them 2-bushel-sized pokes of flour, 50-pound sack of salt. Got me 2 50-pound kegs of black powder and a dozen of them 10-pound bars of lead to make your own bullets back then. I got Paul a dozen twists of King B chawing tobacco. Got a double fistful of rock candy for my brothers, a little Cupid doll for my sister Kim, several little niceties for Mama. It was a good year for furs. Well, I took all that stuff outside and I packed it on old Blackjack. Man, when he was loaded, he looked like one of them fancy Conestoga covered wagons. Then I crawled up over the top of it all, dropped down into the saddle, leaned back and said, "Get Jack!" Blackjack started back off toward Haywood Holler. Now, I had a few balls left in my shot pouch. And before I left Sparkman store, I done tapped a bung in one of them kegs of powder, filled up my powder horn. So I fixed my gun where it was ready loaded, ready to shoot. And as we meandered along, I squinched my eyes a little bit. I went into hunting mode. It was hunting time, and I was happy as a woodpecker in a lumber yard. We just got up in the hills, and old Blackjack just stopped. I looked out. I seen a big old buck deer standing up the slope a piece ahead. Ooh, he was a big one. He's so big it took 2 dogs just to bark at him. I mean, he's a big one. Now, knowing my rifle was ready loaded to shoot, I pulled up my muzzle, wet the front sight to cut the haze, aim steady like, tightened my knees again old Blackjack's side, took a deep breath in, let half out, easy, squeezy, blam! Old Blackjack didn't even flinch, and down come that deer, dead enough to talk bad about him. I jumped out of the saddle, went over and dragged him off the trail. I skipped me a strap of hide off one of his rear legs. I used that strap of buckskin to tie his feet together. Heaved him up, hung him on the saddle horn. Got back up in that saddle and get Jack! Off we went toward Haywood Holler. In a bit, up near the top of the foothills, I looked out in the forest. Here come a great old big black bear stomaching down the side of the mountain toward the trail. Ooh, he is a big one. Must have weighed at least 726 pounds if he weighed an ounce. I thought, if I could drop you, your fat will season this buck up nicely. So knowing my rifle was ready loaded to shoot, I up with my muzzle, wet the front sight to cut the haze, aim steady like, tightened my knees again old Blackjack's sides, took a deep breath in, let half out, easy, squeezy, blam! Old Blackjack didn't even flinch, and down come that bear, dead before he knowed he was dying. He tumbled right down that mountain, boogity, 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 and whoomp, stopped rolling up against a log laying right there on the uphill side of the trail. Now, being propped up on that log put Mr. Bear about level with old Blackjack's belly. So I tied his feet together with a strip off that deer's other hind leg, led old Blackjack over there close to the log, and I hooked that bear's feet over the saddle horn. I got back up in the saddle and get Jack! Old Blackjack eased away from that log. When that bear's weight pulled off that log and struck old Blackjack, he just stopped. Turned his head around and looked at me a little goggle-eyed. But he's a good one. He just stretched out and shifted his front feet. Then he put his head down and he shifted his hind feet. He went to picking his way up that mountain gap what led to Haywood Holler. Going a little slow. When he's passing through the top of the gap, I thought now would be a good time to let old Blackjack take a little blow, get his breath before we started down into Haywood Holler. Now, as we was sitting there resting, I heard a dove a-cooing close by. I looked around, up there sitting on a dead limb right over the trail, and I thought to myself, you know what? Mama works hard cooking for all of us. It'd be nice if she had a little bite of fresh bird meat to snack on while she was cooking supper. I never failed to keep my rifle ready loaded to shoot. So I up with my muzzle, wet the front sight to cut the haze, aim steady like, tighten my knees again old Blackjack's sides, took a deep breath in, let half out, easy squeezy, BAM! Blackjack didn't even flinch, and down come that dove, clipped his head clean off. That little bird fell and got caught up in the brush alongside the trail. So, after resting a couple more minutes, get Jack! I rolled on up and pulled over. I didn't even get down. I just reached down out of the saddle and picked up that little bird. Well, when I lifted that itty bitty bird, old Blackjack moaned and groaned and his back just give way. Now, he was an awful good horse, and he always done the best he could. He kept his head and rear end up proud and high, but his back swagged all the way to the ground. I jumped off, seen the shape he was in, and I asked myself, Self, what have you done? I was pretty certain old Blackjack done gone and broke his back. What in tarnation am I going to do? I unloaded the bear and the deer, and he couldn't heave himself up off the ground. So I just knowed his back was broke. But I thought, if I could just get him up, he'd be okay. So I studied for a mite. I took out my tree brand Boker genuine red bone handled Stockman knife. It had 3 blades, high carbon steel, made in Solingen, Germany, the other side of the world. So good. Well, I went over to this tree and I opened my cutting blade real careful like, and I cut the saddle girth beneath old Blackjack's belly to let the load come off of him. He still couldn't pick himself up. So I slipped around as a last ditch effort. I slipped around, I took out the whittling blade of my tree brand Boker genuine tree brand, yeah, you know the story. I cut me a thumb-sized stick, about yay long, off a hickory tree. And I trimmed the twigs off of it. Then real sudden like, I twirled around, got a 3-step running head start, and I pelayed old Blackjack proper right across his lifted rump. Whoosh! And I screamed loud as I could, get Jack! Looking back, I ain't ashamed to say, folks, mistakes was made that day. My yelling and the sting of that thumb-sized hickory switch scared old Blackjack so bad that he shot forward with everything he had left and jumped clean out of his skin. His carcass flew through the air 30, 35 feet and hit the ground skadoosh. Oh. I panicked a little. Oh, Lord, I done killed the best riding, roping, cutting, hunting, plowing, packing, all-around quarter horse that ever lived in the hills of Haywood Holler. Oh, no. Oh, no. I killed him. He hit the ground center of the graveyard dead. Man, I tell you, I was grief-stricken. He sure was a good old horse, and now he was gone. Gone, gone, gone. Oh. Oh, he gone. Oh. But what do you do? In the hills, life goes on. So I took old Blackjack's hide that he jumped out of and I spread it out on the ground. Put all them rations and gifts in it, then the deer, then the bear, and that little dove, and I tied all 4 of them long legs together. Stuck my arms and head through them just right. Took hold of a little dogwood tree and pulled myself up, swinging that load around on my back. Whoosh! Oh, man. I got my balance. and I set out, teetering down the trail toward Haywood Holler. Well, when I got home, I jerked open the door and I went on in the house. I started walking the floor, just fretting and grieving about old Blackjack. Now, I knew everyone in the family thought the world of that hoss. How was I going to tell him he was gone? I tromped backwards and then I tromped forward, just a fretting and a worrying. Directly, Mama looked at me and said, "Son, empty that pack and go get washed up for supper." I plumb forgot I had it on. So I slung the pack off and untied it. I put all them rations in the kitchen, put my powder in a good dry spot in my bedroom, threw them bars of lead down beside the hearth, laid Paul's tobacco out on one end of the mantel, put Mama's stuff on the other end, pulled the candy out, put it up there out of reach till after supper, gave Kimbo her doll. Then I skinned that deer and I skinned that bear, took the meat of both of them on out and hung it in the smokehouse. Plucked and cleaned that dove and handed it to Mama. Then I took the deer hide and the bear hide and old Blackjack's hide, throwed them all down behind the door where we kept our furs, what was ready for tanning. Then we all ate supper. Everybody was enjoying their store-bought prizes. It done gone dark. I went on to bed. I didn't tell the family about old Blackjack's demise. Didn't have the heart to. I figured the news would go down easier after a good night's sleep and a good breakfast. I knew, took the visions in my head and the pain in my heart, it was going to be a long night for me, and it was. Way up into the night, I had just dozed off, and my brother Mike woke me up and said, "Get up and go to the door. Blackjack's trying to come in the house." I snapped awake, and then my heart sunk. "No, little brother, it ain't Blackjack. He's laying dead up there on the mountain with his broke back and no hide." I ain't ashamed, I'll say I was tearing up. But Mike didn't need to see that. So I rolled over and I just snarled at him, "Go back to sleep, boy." About an hour later, I just about cried myself to sleep. And Mama shook me and said, "Get up, go to the door. I think you forgot to feed Blackjack. He's pawing at the door." I didn't even roll over. I didn't want Mama to see my swollen, crying eyes. I just said, "I told Mike. Blackjack's took care of, Mama. Please stop bothering me and just let me sleep." Well, about an hour later, I'd finally dozed off when the covers was snatched off of me. When I opened my eyes, Paul was glaring down at me, and I like to have died right there in that bed. He growled, "Get out of this bed. Go tend to that hoss. I heard him nicker, wanting to be fed, so get your britches on or I'll give you a reason to lose some sleep." I'm awake now. I wasn't sleepy no more, so to prevent a whooping, I got dressed and I headed out the door to run off whatever heifer or critter done wandered up and was making the whole house up. I lit a chunk of fat wood down next to the fire, and when it flared up, I used it as a light, and I went to the door and opened it. Lo and behold, there stood old Blackjack, stuck his head right up in my face. There he stood, the cold snow just piling down and fogging up on his back. He is shaking and shivering with no hide to shield him. "Oh, my loving Blackjack, I thought you was dead. I'm going to take care of you." I tossed that fat wood out in the snow, and I felt around behind the door, grabbed his skin, throwed it up over him before he froze to death. I was half dressed, barefoot, out in that starlit yard trying to get his hide stretched out, and I just couldn't get it to fit. Well, I feared it done dried and shrunk up a little bit, as hides tend to do. I allowed that I'd have to tie it on, but being barefoot, I didn't have no shoestrings. So I reached over next to the house. I know there were some blackberry vines growing there. I broke off a handful of them. I wrenched them up where they'd be soft and twisted them up, made me a cord. And I tied that skin on my horse with those vines. Led old Blackjack out there to the warmth of the barn. Went back and jumped in my bed. I finished the night sleeping like a baby. My good old horse was alive and well. Oh. As I said before, looking back, mistakes was made. the next morning when it got daylight, I looked out the window and I seen what a sure enough boo-boo I done made. You see, Pa had killed a big black ram sheep for mutton the day before when I was gone to town. Me not knowing about it, had reached over and instead of getting Blackjack's hide, I'd grabbed up that old black ram's hide and throwed it over Blackjack and tied it on him. Oh, Lord, my beautiful horse looked like a big half-naked sheep. I quickly got dressed, ran out there and tried to pull it off. It done took root. I called the family out to help me. No matter how much we pulled and tugged, it would not come off, so we just left it on him. You know what? In a few days, that hide healed up, and a nice wool sweater covered Blackjack all over. It growed down his long legs and under his slightly swayed belly. He had thick wool on his face and the biggest sheep tail you ever seen just hanging down over his bohunkers. Man, he was still the best roping, riding, hunting, plowing, packing, all-around farm horse that ever lived back in the hills of Haywood Holler. But he was better than ever, because from then on, we sheared old Blackjack twice a year and got more wool off of him than we could have off of 2 dozen sheep. Yes, sir. He was still a powerful, good horse. He was just a little sway-backed and woolly. Years later, I joined the Army and moved off. My youngest brother, David, wrote me a letter. Told me Blackjack was doing good. Said, matter of fact, you know that blackberry vine I used as a string? David said it done took root in old Blackjack's belly. Done took root and bloomed out. Done started making berries. Mama'd call old Blackjack up at the house and just sit, pick enough berries to make all our pies and preserves for the year. Folks, just between us, I never did truly believe that last part, because it didn't happen when I was a boy. Thank you for watching. Again, I apologize for my voice. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. This will probably be my last video until I finish kicking cancer's butt. Don't know yet. I hope to see you again in the spring. Until then, I love you all. Try to love one another. It's easy, even when it's not.